Hello, and welcome back to the Holistically Awakened podcast, your one-stop destination for all things health and a kick-ass life. I'm Laurence, a certified nutritional practitioner and health coach, and your host of the Holistically Awakened podcast. This is your show to learn from me and inspiring experts on how to up-level in all aspects of your life, including health, wealth, relationships, spirituality, and business, so you can live your very best life as your highest potential. No BS policy. This podcast is about awakening to the truth and talking about what really needs to happen to make your life what you want it to be, whatever that may look like. Chatting all about dairy and PCOS today. So a lot of you may have been told that you should avoid dairy for PCOS. And today I kind of want to talk about why these reasons may be and if you really do need to avoid dairy. So for me, for sure, I've been having issues with dairy for a very long time, and by avoiding it, I've really been able to improve my digestion, inflammation, my PCOS symptoms, my acne, but this is due to several reasons. So the first reason is going to be due to inflammation. So inflammation is going to be a driver in PCOS, and it's going to also promote a lot of these symptoms like the acne and androgens, even hair loss, hirsutism, these kinds of things. It can also inhibit ovulation and affect our cycles. So this inflammation is going to usually mostly be coming from the A1 casein protein, which is found in milk, and it's associated with increased gastrointestinal inflammation. So we usually talk about lactose, but I want to first start today by talking about casein. So specifically A1 casein, it's a source of the peptide beta casomorphin, and casomorphin's drug-like effects can explain why it actually can worsen anxiety and mood disorders and cause this increased cravings that we have for dairy and sugar. So if you've ever wondered, like, why is this so addicting and I can't get rid of my cheese and my milk, this is a big reason. When we think about it, milk is really supposed to grow a baby calf, and it's going to be addictive to the baby, and it can also be addictive to us because we just want more and more and more of it. And this can also cause a withdrawal effect when it's stopped. But when you actually eliminate it for a certain amount of time, you'll find that you actually don't crave it anymore, which is what is happening with me. I don't really care about not eating cheese, even though it's super yummy, but I'm not really that fazed about it. So this peptide can actually stimulate inflammatory cytokines during the digestion of A1 casein. So this triggers histamine release from mast cells, and this can promote symptoms of PMS because there are actually mast cells in the uterine lining. But it can also promote or worsen congestion, metabolic issues, as well as acne, eczema, asthma, allergies, and weight gain. These can all worsen, or they can also become triggered. So a clinical sign that can confirm the need to avoid A1 casein, so if you're wondering if this affects you or not, is a history of recurrent upper respiratory infections in childhood, as well as ear infections, bronchitis, tonsillitis. I had recurring ear infections when I was a child all the time, again and again and again, and I definitely think that this was an issue for me back then as well. So one thing to remember is that A1 casein is actually not found in sheep and goat's milk. So this is why many people do better with these types of milks. For me, for instance, I'll sometimes have like a goat feta, things like that, but I usually tend to keep it minimal. But this is, a better tolerated option for you. If you do find you don't do well with cow's milk, then you could always try that. Second of all, when we think about milk, we always think about calcium, but I really want to, bust this myth about we need milk for strong bones. It's actually been shown that countries with the lowest rates of dairy consumption, like those in Africa and Asia, have the lowest rates of osteoporosis compared to the highest rates in Western countries. And there's actually going to be a lot of alternatives. So things like dark leafy greens, sesame tahini, sea vegetable, sardines, salmon, these are all going to be some good sources of calcium. And the thing with milk is that it is acidic, so it can actually leach minerals from the bone to balance our pH. So if we're eating a highly acidic diet with lots of animal products, not enough, antioxidant-rich foods, not enough plant foods, then we can become more acidic and actually leach out these minerals. So this is where we don't need we don't need dairy to be able to have, a good nutrient status. And there's actually a lot of plant foods that have calcium as well. So that is totally a myth, even though milk does have calcium. It's not always going to be the best form, and it's not always going to be the best option either. So lactose, of course, we all talk about lactose intolerance. About 75% of the world's population is genetically unable to properly digest milk and other dairy products due to lactose intolerance. So lactose is the sugar found in dairy. It can be tricky to digest, and if you don't make enough lactase, which is the lactose digesting enzyme, then this can cause digestive symptoms like IBS. And many people's lactase significantly decreases with age. So as we get older, we lose this enzyme to actually digest the milk. Makes sense. We are drinking milk from our mothers when we are little, and then we kind of wean off of it. But as adults, most of us just tend to keep going with milk, and this is where we can see some issues. So 2 out of 3 adults are actually not built to drink milk after infancy. And if you are lactose intolerant, then your intestines won't be able to digest the milk, and this can create this sticky mucus lining or biofilm, and this can inhibit mineral absorption, nutrient absorption, and this can affect your digestion as well. Whey is another protein that's found in dairy, and this is going to be quickly absorbed into the bloodstream. So this is great for like bodybuilders, people who are wanting to build muscle, and specifically around workouts, because that's when you want to spike insulin. But if you have PCOS and you have insulin resistance, we're not really looking at spiking insulin. That's kind of not the point here. So this can stimulate insulin growth factor, the whey, and this obviously can worsen insulin resistance by spiking your insulin, and this can create these symptoms like the androgenic symptoms, issues with ovulation, acne, and this is another reason why I usually see women do a lot better off of dairy if they have PCOS and issues like that, and also why whey protein is not, in my opinion, the best protein to go for. And then, of course, when we're looking at hormones, milk naturally contains a small amount of variety of hormones like testosterone, progesterone, insulin growth factor that we talked about. And these are also going to be commonly treated with antibiotics to kill potentially harmful bacteria. And you can also find pesticides as well. So cow feed is usually going to be soy or grains that have been genetically modified. And this can also reduce the beneficial anti-inflammatory fats like the omega-3 fats and increase the inflammatory fats like the omega-6 fats. And this is already usually going to be out of balance in our standard American diet. We're usually having too much omega-6, not enough omega-3. And conventional animal products are going to be a big source of that, which can create more inflammation. So when we also see processed dairy products, they're going to be pasteurized and heated at high temperatures to kill off, bacteria. But this can also kill off the natural enzymes and probiotics, which are very beneficial and are going to be really helpful for digestion and gut health. This can definitely throw off your own hormonal balance, and this can negatively impact your microbiome. It can promote estrogen dominance, and this provides exogenous hormones into your system that your body now has to process. A lot of us already have issues processing our own hormones, and our liver is overburdened. We're not really eliminating properly. We're having issues with detoxification. We are already having a hard time processing all of the hormones in our body and things like chemicals and toxins in our environment. Plus, we are getting these additional hormones into our system as well. So this is where we can see hormonal imbalances get worse. And not to mention the horrifying conditions that conventional animals are brought up in, which is why they need to be treated with, medications, antibiotics, etc. And this can create a lot more damage, not only for the animal, but then we're eating that, right? So it's a lot of stress hormones and different medications that are pumped into them, and these inflammatory grains and these feeds that also shift the fats that are found in the meat. So this is really just something to remember. It's not really, in terms of dairy, we're not always going to have to completely eliminate it. Some people will do better than others. The quality does really matter. The quantity matters as well. Some people will notice any amount of dairy will affect them, while others can do well with a lower amount as well as, good quality. So I usually suggest giving up dairy for about 4 weeks and see how you feel. Because if we just have it once in a while, we're not really getting rid of the antibodies in our system, and we might not really realize that it's actually doing us more harm than good, because symptoms might be obvious, but they might not be obvious. For me, it was definitely not obvious. It was more like not immediate symptoms, it was more delayed symptoms. But now when I eat it, I have immediate reactions because I don't really introduce dairy into my diet. So if you do choose to go with dairy products, as I mentioned before, you might want to go with goat or sheep's milk. That might be a better option for you. Otherwise, choosing grass-fed, organic, full-fat dairy products always going to be better, as well as fermented, because these are going to be better tolerated and easier to digest because it's already broken down in the fermented form. So things like kefir, and then obviously, good quality products. So I hope that this was helpful for you. If you do want an overview and a little bit more in depth of how dairy can affect your PCOS, check out my blog. It's in my bio, and you can check out all of the things I talked about today and a little bit more in specifics to PCOS. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you loved it. And as usual, if you do enjoy the episode, the podcast, I really appreciate a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. It really helps my podcast reach more people who need it and to spread my message. So I really appreciate your time for tuning in, and I can't wait to share what's coming next week. Please note, this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as medical advice. Please consult with your medical provider or practitioner for your own needs and to assess what is best for you.